staying at the United Nations, but on a different matter now. A humanitarian official has told the Security Council civilian death toll in attacks on Ukraine has continued to mount. The comment was made by Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Deputy Emergency Relief Coordinator Joyce Msuya. She pointed out in her statement that few parts of the country are spared from the hostilities, particularly in the east, northeast, and in the south.
The civilian toll of attacks on Ukraine has continued to mount. Few parts of the country are spared from these hostilities, particularly in the east and south. But an escalation in fighting in the Kharkiv region since the 10th of May has had the heaviest impact. Shopping centers, homes, educational establishments, shops, office buildings, parks, and public transport have all been struck in recent weeks. At least 18,100 people in the Kharkiv region have been newly displaced, according to estimates by the International Organization for Migration. Civilians who remain in border and frontline areas in Kharkiv face dire conditions. Many are cut off from access to food, medical care, electricity, and gas. Elderly people are disproportionately affected because they are often unable or reluctant to leave their homes. In northern Kharkiv, where the fighting is heaviest, more than half of those killed or injured have been over the age of 60.
Participation in the Peace Summit in Switzerland will give a platform to demonstrate a clear commitment of the international community to the appropriate principles and values. The success of the summit and global presence of this event will be a clear signal that the world does not support the war and wants peace. The summit is aimed to give a platform to discuss various ideas to achieve a comprehensive, just and lasting peace, and to give a high-level political start to prepare a joint peace framework which should restore peace for Ukraine, for Europe, and for the world.
In another development, the second stage of the non-strategic nuclear arms drills between Russia and Belarus has begun at an undisclosed location. The drills began on Monday and were known because the Russian Defense Ministry released footage depicting the Iskander operational tactical missile system being transported to designated positions in anticipation of missile launches. In addition to this, the video also highlights a MiG-31 supersonic fighter interceptor and a Tu-22 M3 missile-carrying bomber equipped with Russia's hypersonic Kinzhal missile engaging in training exercises. The Defense Ministry emphasized that the exercises, initiated by the decision of Russian President Vladimir Putin, are aimed at maintaining readiness of personnel and equipment of combat units of non-strategic nuclear weapons for a response and with a view to unconditionally safeguarding the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Russian state. On May 6, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Russian armed forces had started preparing exercises with non-strategic nuclear weapons due to remarks made by politicians from France, the UK and the US, who mentioned the readiness and even the intention to deploy armed forces to Ukraine. Well, staying with the war in the region, Bloomberg has released a report saying Russia is allegedly sending thousands of migrants and foreign students to fight alongside its troops in the war against Ukraine for visa renewal. The business news platform says the assessment was done by some European officials who alleged that the Kremlin was doing so to add extra manpower using the tactics first deployed by the Wagner mercenary group. The report added that Russia has been threatening not to extend the visas of African students and young workers unless they agree to join the military, according to officials familiar with the matter. Chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Organization in Russia, Dr. Godwin Ibe, joins us now to discuss this report. Dr. Godwin, thanks for joining us. And I'm sure that you've seen this report. I mean, you must have had messages coming from all over the country drawing your attention to this. And you've read it. You have had experience with Nigerians who are in Russia and, you know, their experiences. And you've also seen this war. We've talked to you a lot about this. Is there any truth to any of the allegations in this report?
Thank you once again for having me. Of course, there's no truth whatsoever to this report. In fact, it couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, it's clear that there's a special military operation going on, but Russia has not only the initiative at the front, but it outnumbers Ukraine by 2 to 3 times more, and it has 20% of the former Ukrainian territory. And there's a new offensive in Kharkov. There's a new offensive in Sunni region. It's very unlikely for Russia, that has an excess of troops and non-shortage of manpower, to be the one who is trying to look for any sort of person. But, you know, that does not mean that people cannot volunteer. Both sides in this war, or do I call it military operation, both in Russia and Ukraine and NATO, even NATO special contractors, they all need mercenaries. They all try to recruit people. And that's absolutely normal for every side. By saying that it is forced, or people with business visas are told to go to the front, is just absolutely nonsensical.
Yeah, it almost sounds like fake news, you know, really. And this story is making the rounds, especially on diaspora platforms where people have been reacting to them. I've seen, you know, some of the comments made on this. People are saying, you know, because a country like Nigeria, I mean, just having the wrong, you know, conversations about this, not even questioning, you know, where this could be coming from or the motives behind such a report as this. And you rightly mentioned that Africans have been enlisting to join the Russian army, even during the period of the war, but they're not being forced, are they?
No one is forced. There are so many reasons why Nigerians, especially those with dual citizenship, so Russia allows dual citizenship, who may want to defend their country of residence. Maybe they love the country, maybe they are fighting for their family, or maybe they do not have residency and hope that, you know, through their loyalty and dedication to the motherland, the government could consider giving them expedited residency. All these are all business, social, economic interests, and maybe security also interest in terms of defending your family. But there's no one that is forced. Moreover, I'd like to call your attention to the fact that we have an embassy, the embassy of Nigeria in Russia, and there's no such report, not just from the Nigerian embassy, from all African countries in Russia. There's no such report. I am in contact with tens of thousands of Nigerians in Russia. In fact, they were the ones who called my attention, as you rightly pointed out, to the fake news article and said, well, what's going on? We have not heard about this. Have you? What is going on? I said, I haven't, surely haven't. So I tried to do some research on the person who wrote the article, who's Adekunle, who has some affiliation with Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation, a U.S. foundation. So maybe I can understand his affiliation, but he also quoted Bloomberg, which is also an American company. And obviously, we know America sees Russia as a competitor. So it clearly looks like a sponsored campaign against Russia to sow unrest among Nigerians in Russia. But that didn't work because we have direct contact with all our members. We swiftly informed them, and many of them said, thank you so much for calming us down. Thank you so much for giving us the truth. And thank you so much for making sure that this propaganda campaign failed.
Yeah, it does seem like a propaganda piece, doesn't it? So I'm just wondering, you know, how dangerous this sort of information being released out there, how dangerous it could be for everyone involved. First of all, for the Africans who reside in Russia, and then for even those of us outside who are reading it and wondering what exactly is going on.
It's absolutely crazy because it's coming at a particular time when Nigeria and Russia are improving bilateral relations. Nigeria has applied officially or unofficially to join the BRICS, and they obviously would love to also be part of the BRICS nations. We have 30 countries that have indicated interest. It's coming at a time where Russia and Nigeria are increasing trade turnovers. It's coming at a very important time in geopolitics. And I think it's very ill-advised because there's nothing to gain. I think both the East and the West would be much better if East and West get along together because they add so much value. But this kind of campaign does nobody no good because it causes unrest and it just causes the wrong kind of public reaction. I think the aim of regime change in Russia has already failed. We have our commander-in-chief and our president, President Putin. The attempts to change him failed woefully. Why can't those people who are still doing this, turn the page and move over to the next thing rather than trying to cause unrest in a country that really doesn't need it?
Just to establish a fact that the Nigerian community in Russia, in Moscow also where you are, they're all fine. Everyone is okay. And nobody's been dragged from their homes in the middle of the night and being compelled to be conscripted into the Russian army. No one is being forced to do things that they're not supposed to be doing. I did speak to a Nigerian who is also resident in Moscow, and he says things are fine. Nigerians are really having the time of their lives living in Moscow.
Yes, you could just ask anybody. I'm just the chairman of NIDO. I'm in contact with all our members. But if you just ask anyone, no one. And we actually took out the time to ask people. I called a couple of people. There's no doubt that in any society there are people who may have some problems with the law. I am in contact with Nigerians who have violated migration laws, who may be in detention, or even those who may be in prison. In every country in the world, there are people from every country who may, be on the wrong side of the law. But we also always make sure that they are fine, they receive consular assistance, they have dignity, and we try to give them as much assistance as they are. But nothing gives you the right to violate the law or to believe that, something you kind of have a different standard applied to you because you're from Nigeria or from any country. So we try to provide as much care as we can and consular assistance by connecting them to the embassy.
Well, since you've raised the topic, I was wondering about, immigration, which has been a major issue for Europe. It was reflected, over the weekend with the parliamentary elections. And I'm just wondering, how much of an impact that had on the elections in Russia. Did Russia participate in the European parliamentary elections? And was this a topic of main concern for voters?
Russia is not part of the European Parliament, and obviously this special military operation and the NATO expansion closer to Russia border, or do I call it this aggravated military escalation between the East and the West, will even make it less likely for Russia to want to be in such a body next time. We really urge for peace and we urge for more negotiation because that's the only thing that could really move us forward. We have a lot of problems in the world, from farming to unemployment, and we have to let's focus less on wars and move on to improving the lives of all our citizens in all countries around the world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Godwin Ibe, for speaking with us. And I know it is safe in Moscow, but still stay safer. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amarachi.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has been rallying support for Ukraine ahead of the B9 summit. The summit is of 9 countries of NATO's eastern flank, also known as the Bucharest 9. It kicked off today in the Latvian capital, Riga. The summit is one of several events marking NATO's 75th anniversary and the 20th of Latvia's NATO membership. Leaders of Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania and Slovakia are also attending the B9 summit, which is the first that Latvia is hosting.
We will address our deterrence and defense. Allies are stepping up our efforts on defense spending, and I expect around 2/3 of allies to invest at least 2% of GDP in defence this year. We are also stepping up defence production and ensuring that allies are investing more together. This reduces costs and increases interoperability. NATO is ready to protect all allies, and over the last years we have implemented the largest reinforcement of our collective defence in a generation, with high readiness of our troops, with combat troops in the eastern part of the alliance, battle groups here in Latvia and in other countries in the eastern part of the alliance. So let there be no doubt, NATO is there to defend and protect all allies. And this is the way to prevent an attack. Credible deterrence, strong collective defence, is something which is important for NATO, not because we want to provoke a conflict, but because we want to prevent the conflict. We want to prevent an armed attack on a NATO ally, and NATO's core and main task is to preserve peace by delivering credible deterrence at any stage. Ukraine needs predictable, stable flow of military support, also to communicate clearly to Moscow that they cannot wait us out. We will be there for as long as it takes, and by communicating a long-term commitment to Ukraine, we're actually making it easier to end this war soon, because the more obvious it is for President Putin that he cannot wait us out, the earlier he may end up with the conclusion that he has to sit down and accept that Ukraine continues as a sovereign independent nation.
Staying with multilateral ties, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met with his South African and Ethiopian counterparts, speaking of the continuity of friendly and sustainable relations with the countries. This happened on the sidelines of a two-day meeting of foreign ministers belonging to the BRICS bloc of emerging economies, which is underway in the Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod. The meeting marks the first gathering since the group expanded from 5 members to 9 in January, with the addition of Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates as official members.
You remember how important, first of all, we would like to express our support for the African National Congress in light of the elections which took place a couple of weeks ago, and we are convinced that we will continue to ensure the friendly, sustainable relations. This continuity was already confirmed by our South African friends.
So this year we're celebrating 30 years of freedom from apartheid, and this is a very important anniversary for us because it signals that we are entrenching freedom and democracy in our country. So I associate the Russian Federation very closely with the progress that South Africa is making. I'm really glad to be, and I congratulate you as the chair of the BRICS foreign ministers, and of course the main organizer of the summit that will be held later this year. I believe the meetings thus far have been very successful.
Remember how important it was a series of meetings between President Putin and Prime Minister have met. They met several times in 2019 during the first Russia-Africa summit, and in July 2023, during the second visit of Prime Minister, we have met, and of course we expect his participation in the BRICS summit in Kazan in October this year.
It's been a great pleasure to be here in your beautiful city. Quite, as I said earlier in the morning session, quite delighted to be welcomed by traditional cultural setting. At the train station, I came by train from Moscow.